Hello YouTube, and welcome to Full Dottle, a channel dedicated to tamping topics such as pipes, tobacco, lure, and more. I am your host, the Bearded Briarman, and without further ado, let's get lit. Welcome back everyone, and on this episode of Full Dottle, I'm going to be doing a review of Cornell Diehl's Cajun Cake. Now during my giveaway I had everybody answer a question that wanted to enter, and in that question I asked what you wanted to see from me. What content would you like to see from Full Dottle? Several of the answers asked if I would give first impressions on a blend, and so from now on my format is going to change. I have two tobaccos that I'm going to review first, simply because I've already become acquainted with them and a first impression would be deceptive. So I have Cajun Cake, and then my next review is going to be on Cabby's mixture. Once those are done though, I will start doing two videos for each blend. The first video, I will open the tin on camera. I will give you my first impressions of it, from the tin note to the first smoke. On the second video, I'm going to give you a full review after I've had about a week with the blend to fully dissect it. My review process is going to be using an abbreviated form that can be found on the North American Society of Pipe Collectors website. I'll leave a link down in the bucket. On this form, it's not going to be the full form. I'm just going to take several components from it and use those in my review process. Each of the different topics or categories is going to be out of 5 stars. So when I'm reviewing these tobaccos, just keep in mind this is out of 5 stars. At the end, the overall rating has a 65-point total possibility. If the blend is knock it out of the park, love it to death, want to stock it in my cellar for future use, it's going to be around the 65-point mark. The lower it is, the less I am going to recommend the blend to other people. So for today on Cajun Cake, it's going to be a full review. And let's get started. On tobacco reviews, Cajun Cake is a vapor. The strength is medium, and I would actually say that it's in between medium and strong. The Perique in it does offer a little bit more nicotine than I would consider just a medium strength. The taste is medium to full, there is no flavoring detected, and the room note is considered tolerable. They say, we start with naturally sweet red Virginias and add just the right touch of everyone's favorite Cajun spice, Louisiana Perique. Then we press it into an old-fashioned crumble cake, which deepens and marries the flavors into what is quickly becoming one of C&D's most popular blends ever. As I said, the components in it are red Virginias, Perique, and unsweetened Cavendish. Let's dive in. Upon first light, you can get the spice from the Perique. It's Perique heavy, but I wouldn't say that it's overwhelming or overpowering. but it's definitely present. I'm not getting a lot of those stewed fruits from the flavoring, or from the flavor. The Perique on this offers a lot of spice, but I'm not getting hardly any of the fruits from it. The Red Virginias are extremely mild in this. You can definitely taste the toasted rye bread, but it is almost a hint of it. It's not very bright. The smoke from it has a very thick mouthfeel, and you can definitely get the creaminess from the unsweetened Cavendish. However, I'm not getting any of the sweetness from the Cavendish. And except for the creaminess coming from it, I almost would not know that the Cavendish is even in it. The Perique is forward. The Red Virginias are in the background, and they're way back there. On the depth of this, I only gave it a 2, because although you can discern that there are Red Virginias in it, they are so muted, so mild, that they don't play a big role in this blend. The Perique is present, however, it doesn't offer its full depth of flavor. You're not getting any of the plum or fig from the Perique. And because the Red Virginias are so muted in this, they're so subtle, I think the complexity, I gave a 2 as well, because they just don't play along well with each other. They're not competing. They don't even, the Red Virginias, it's almost as if they don't want to make an appearance. However, they are there. You can tell they're there. But depth and complexity of this blend is very, very shallow. I gave them both a 2 on those categories, and balance, I gave a 2 as well. Because they're simply not marrying. I know the description on it says that they are married. They don't marry well. The Perique just wants to keep getting in front of the Red Virginias, and they're not letting him come through. This blend also has a bit of a roughness to it, a bitter roughness. When you drink a red wine and you get those tannins, they have a bitterness that collects in the back of your throat, and that's what this is doing for me. For me, it's a very bitter blend. And I'm not getting hardly any sweetness out of it. The Red Virginias generally, if I think are well presented, would give that pastry-like sweetness, that toasted, when you eat a piece of toasted bread, you get that sweetness if you chew on it long enough for when the carbohydrates start to break down. That sweetness to me is just simply not present on this. So I gave it a 2 on sweetness. As far as pleasant fruit, I gave a 1.5, I believe. You have to forgive me. This is the first time I'm doing this, so be patient with me. But I've got my notes here in front of me just out of camera range. And I actually have 2 on pleasant fruit. I just don't get a lot of fruit out of this blend at all. The spice, I have a 2.5 for pleasant spice because, like I said, it's not overwhelming. It's not something that you're just going to be like, wow, that is way too spicy. The spice is very present, but it's not something that's unenjoyable. It's not horrible. That's why I gave it a 2.5. It's right in the middle of the road there. I'm not getting any citrus out of this. Or when you taste a rye bread, you get this a dark tang to it. And I'm not getting hardly any of that out of the Red Virginias. Again, they're there. They're easily discernible even if they are subtle. So I did give it a 2.5 on pleasant tang, middle of the road once again. It's just kind of for me, I read a lot of reviews on this. I even went on YouTube to watch other people's reviews, and I just didn't find much. Now, as far as the written reviews, there seems to be a lot of people that really enjoy this blend. For me, it's just a so-so blend. So it's right in the middle of the road for me. But nonetheless, I'm going to smoke this bowl down to halfway, and then I'll come back with the conclusion of my review. I would like to say, though, as I was doing research for another video that I'm going to post later on, I learned why a bowl changes midway down. And it's actually kind of obvious, but I guess until I read it, it didn't click in my mind. With Virginias especially, as you smoke the bowl down halfway, if you let that set for just a minute, extinguish itself, and then come back to it, you've actually stoved those Virginias. And as I discuss in my Choosing a Tobacco video, part 1, we talk about stoved Virginias. When they are stoved, it helps to deepen the flavors in the blend and enrich the complexity of the blend. And that's exactly what's happening. I found it very interesting to find that information out, and when I read that, I was like, holy cow, no joke. So that's what happens. So in my reviews, I like to smoke it down halfway and then come back to it, because after stoving it, it brings out a little bit more complexity and a little bit more depth in the flavors. So let me smoke this down halfway. I'll come back and do a conclusion to the review. All right, everybody. I have smoked the bowl down halfway and let the bowl cool just for a little bit. And now let's go back into it and see what changes have occurred. The Red Virginias definitely did heighten at the midway point. It has become sweeter. The Red Virginias are presenting more of their flavors. You can definitely get a lot more of that toasted rye bread out of it. And I'm definitely picking up some of the sweetness from the Red Virginias now. You can catch just a tiny bit of the plum from the Perique as well. And that must have been why I gave it a 2 on the sweetness and the pleasant fruit, pleasant spice, and pleasant tang. I gave it a 2.5 on spice and 2.5 on tang, and it must be why I rated it that high, because it does, after the midway point, it does improve in its depth. However, it's still not a very It still doesn't hold the depth and complexity that I would enjoy in a blend. This is a so-so blend for me. I apologize to those that enjoyed it. The high point of the bowl for me is going to be those red Virginias at the midway point. After stoving for a bit, they do increase and become a little deeper. And it's enough that it's noticeable. So I do have, for the high point of the bowl, because of that reason, I'm giving it a 3. The low point of this bowl, I gave a 1. And that's because this blend to me leaves a very bitter taste and a very thick aftertaste in your mouth. It's like it leaves a layer of bitter on your tongue. And I don't find that very enjoyable. So I gave the low point of the bowl a 1. High point of the bowl a 3 because the Virginias are there. You can taste them. The sweetness comes up at the midway point. It deepens in its flavor profile, and the complexity begins to build a little bit, but just not enough for the low point to come up. The low point for me is a 1. Yeah. At any rate, I have given depth a 2 point, complexity 2 points. Balanced 2 points. I don't think they play well together. I think that this is middle of the road on balance. One is not necessarily just so overwhelming that it's horrible, but they don't marry well together. I think there is too much of a gap between each one. They don't play along and mingle and have a good time together. One is always trying to basically compete with the other one. And so I gave the balance a 2 on it. The sweetness, I gave a 2. The smoothness, I gave a 1.5 because the bitterness of this is just simply rough, in my opinion. I think I would assume that a smoker is going to classify this as a rough smoke. Pleasant fruits, I gave a 2 because they're just not very present. Pleasant spice, pleasant tang, I gave both of those a 2.5. because they're not horrible, they're middle of the road. Spiciness and the tang from the dark Virginias are present. But they're nothing to write home about. On a positive note, it does burn cool. I've smoked so many bowls of this now trying to get something out of it that I could really give a good review. But I can tell you that it doesn't have the tendency to bite. If you smoke it properly, it burns really cool and it doesn't bite. Right out of the tin, it was ready to smoke, so the moisture content was perfect in my opinion. And as far as burning cool and sufficiently dry, I gave both of those 5 points. The tin aroma to me is off-putting. It smells, you can get the dark fruits, the stewed fruits, and that fermented aroma from the periques, but to be quite honest with you, I read the reviews and a lot of people were saying it smelled like brownies or chocolate cake. You got me on that. I consider myself to have a somewhat intuitive palate, and I think that I can smell the aromas quite well, and I'm telling you, to me, the aroma from this jar, when you smell it, unless you really try to dive into it, just upon first inspection, it's about the same as walking into one of those hole-in-the-wall bars where they have the trough in the men's room that has no dividers and they throw those white cakes in there. That's what it smelled like to me. It was just an off-putting, not very pleasant aroma to me. So I gave it a 1. In total, I gave it a 32.5 out of 65, which puts it exactly in the middle. All of those combined, 32.5 out of 65. So I wouldn't recommend this blend to my friends simply because I don't find it enjoyable. There's not much that I can pick up out of this blend that I would say, man, that Cajun cake has X and it's wonderful, or you know, Y, and I just can't get enough of it. I just can't recommend this. But after I've tallied everything up, I got a 32.5, so you're taking your own chances by getting it. If you'd like to critique me and get some to see if I'm off my rocker or if I'm pretty spot on, I encourage you to do it if you want to do that, but I'm telling you right now, with it being a 50-50 shot, you might be wasting your money. I personally am absolutely thrilled that I am done with this blend. I will not be revisiting it unless I find out that Cornell and Diehl somehow got a bad batch of tobacco, which can happen. I'm not going to be revisiting this blend. It's something that I don't enjoy. I'm glad to be done with it. And that's my honest review. So anyway, everybody, that's going to do it for this review of Cornell and Diehl's Cajun Cake. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time we see each other, I bid you farewell and happy piping. Goodbye, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, and on this episode of Full Dottle, I'm going to be doing a review of Cornell and Diehl's Bayou. And that concludes. Have you enlisted in the Full Dottle platoon yet? It's easy. Just click the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload the next episode.